What are we doing? We're looking at a tool called the Reference Story Template, and we are discussing reference stories. Now, a reference story or a case study. Yeah? When we were putting together this whole program, the reference story is an integral part of the sales process. Yeah? All salespeople say they need references. The one big complaint of any sales organization that is new to the market is that they don't have references. Yeah? So they do all sorts of stuff to try and get references. As soon as they've got references, they start using them. And so we were obviously very interested to have a look at a few of these reference stories and see what they actually looked like. Yeah? And so I have a little story. I was, a long time ago, invited to do a seminar which was really a lot of fun. It was for a national bank. I won't say which country, because maybe I'll be shot by the National Bank Terrorism Society or whatever. But it was for a national bank, and it was through a seminar organisation that specialised in females. Yeah? And so this was a bank for executive secretaries of bank managers who were all ladies, and very powerful ladies. And the topic of the seminar was dealing with male chauvinist pigs. Isn't that great? 3 days of how to deal with a male idiot. Yeah? And I am a perfect specimen of a male idiot. Number 1, I'm an idiot. Number 2, I'm a pig. Number 3, I'm chauvinist. Number 4, I'm a man. Did I say that right already? Maybe I said that number 1. I'm sure there's a number 5 and number 6 as well. So my job in this seminar was to play the role of a male chauvinist pig. So for 3 days I was in ecstasy. Absolute brilliant, fantastic role play delirium of great fun, surrounded by these gorgeous executive secretaries. Maybe they weren't all gorgeous, but to me they were all gorgeous. And they were, older than me as well, which was also, very nice. Anyway, I just had 2 years of absolute wonderful experience. Yeah? And the seminar was really successful. So the lady I was working with, she was saying, Tim, it's brilliant, let's try and sell some more of this. I say, yes, yes! We need to write a case study and a reference story. So we wrote a reference story, yeah? And the reference story looked a little bit like this. There's a piece of paper, yeah? There is a description of the seminar that we did. Here is a photograph of the bank's HR director, yeah? You know, with the signature. Here is the photograph of the lady who was in charge of all of the women's stuff with a signature. There were a couple of quotes. This was the best thing we ever did, yeah? And there was quotes from participants, blah, blah, blah. Yeah? A typical case study and reference story. So, with this, I went to a bank. Yeah? I went to one of the high street banks in Vienna. Went in, can I speak to the HR lady? Yes. We have just done a brilliant seminar for executive secretaries. Great. Who did you do it for? We did it for the National Bank. Oh, well, they're different. I said, what do you mean they're different? They said, they're a national bank. We're a high street bank. We're different. I said, what do you mean you're different? You're a bank. A bank is a bank. No. Bank is not bank. Yes, it is. Bank. No, they're different. They do different things. I said, what do you mean they do different things? So she evaluated my reference story based on the similarity of the company. Yeah? The company A, company B, it's different, go away. Yeah? So, great. So I had this experience 3 or 4 times. I went to a leasing bank, the same thing. They're different. They do completely different things. Yeah? I went to an institutional bank. I went to a financing bank. I went to a fund management bank. Same thing every time. Yeah? And it didn't matter that I said, look, do you have secretaries? Yeah? Because the comparison was already there. This comparison of company A, company B was really very, very bad for us. And so what did I do? I left the country, which is always a good thing to do. When in doubt, leave the country. So I left the country and I went to Hungary, to the Hungarian National Bank. I said, I did the great seminar. Oh, with a national bank. Oh, we're a national bank? Yes. Where was it? I said, I'm not allowed to say the name of the country now, because otherwise I look by the local, I said, in a different country. And they said, oh, well, we're different, so they are. I said, oh, you're not different. Well, okay, yes, you are different, but it doesn't matter. They're both national banks. Are you suggesting that the Hungarians are the same as those people? No, of course not. Oh my God, I've just been racist. Yeah? I've just clashed against national stereotypes. My reference story has been compared on geographical principles, and they threw me out. So we did this again with a couple of other examples. Yeah? So that was one very interesting problem that we discovered with this type of reference story. This type of reference story and case study, which is very typical, gets judged on the, is this company the same as mine? And even if it's a little bit different, you find people saying, well, they're not exactly the same as us. And you're saying, yeah, well, if I need to find exactly the same thing as you, then I have to choose your direct competitor. And then you're going to get all angry as well. They said, yes. Yeah? So that's really difficult. Or they're comparing it on geographical side. And they say, well, they're in a different part of the country. Huh? Huh? Yeah, they're worse than you are, or better, or whatever. What difference does that make? They're different. Yeah? It's like the Russians. We are different. Yes, you are. So, no good. We discovered that this type of reference story wasn't doing us any good. The next thing we discovered was, when asking questions, we were saying, where does this reference story actually get used? Yeah? And the answer was, the reference story gets used in two specific places. Place number one, which is a legitimate place for this type of reference story, is where the customer says, do you remember that stage that we spoke about where we said to the customer, how would you like to evaluate our capabilities? And the customer said, well, we need to see some references. Yeah, we need benchmarks, we need this, we need that, we need free gifts, we need a trip to Hawaii, and we need some references. Yeah, that's perfect. We can use this in that case because the customer has requested references. They're not going to use the comparison now because they're using the reference for a part of their internal sales process. Their boss will say, do they have references? Yes, they do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Look at the breadth of their references. This is where it actually does you some good. That's point number one. I'm not saying that this type of reference story does not have a value. I'm just saying it doesn't have much value. Yeah? But the value that it does have is in step number 4, in the customer's internal evaluation process. Yeah? The other place where we discovered it being used was in step 1, or in step 0, at a trade fair. Yeah? A trade fair or an exhibition or an event. You know those things that take place in hotels where there's a speech and 5 or 6 stands around, or a trade fair or something, and on the side of the stand you have a whole stack of sexy marketing material with case studies. This is an ideal use of the reference story because people need to pick these up so that they can throw them into the waste paper basket. Yeah? Waste paper baskets are very important. The human being has a need to pick up colourful pieces of paper for the purpose of putting them into a bag and then throwing them away when they get home. Very, very cool. Yeah? But if you're in a marketing department and your job is creating these things, do not be depressed by this news. It's okay. You're fulfilling a very important part of somebody's life. Yeah? So this is the other place where we discovered that the reference story was being used at trade fairs as a form of reference. Does it have a value? Who knows? But anyway, none of these things were good for us. Yeah? Because we were saying, hang on a second, what's the purpose from the pipeline perspective of a reference story? And the purpose was crystal clear. The purpose was in step 0 or in step 2 for the purpose of creating curiosity with a potentially new customer. That's the only reason that we found for a reference story existing. Yeah? And so for this purpose, this is no good for all of the reasons that we've just looked at. Hence, the reference story template, which we'll have a look at now. So, the reference story template. You can maybe remember this visual from step 1, all the way back to step 1. We saw this picture in our pizza analogy and our opportunity plan and account plan, where we have different business functions with different goals, looking for different actions that achieve those goals. Yeah? In an IT world, when you run a project, you generally have more than one person who is the beneficiary of what you do. Yeah? It's very rare that there is only one person who benefits. If we look at the translation environment, you have a translated document that goes onto a website. Who benefits from that? The marketing person benefits, yeah? The public relations people benefit, and the product development people benefit, potentially. They all have a vested interest in making sure that that website looks okay. If you're translating manuals, yeah, for instruction manuals, then the manufacturing department benefits, the marketing people benefit, the sales organization benefit from your product and service. Which means it is possible to look at the successful story that you have created from 1 or 2 or even 3 different perspectives. Which means you can possibly write small reference stories which are focused on people and functions and not on companies or geographies. Yeah? For example, and here we can see our epic structure again coming from step 3. Environment. This was the situation, this was the department, this was the type of company that we were working with, and this is the person that we were speaking to. We were speaking to a sales director, or to a marketing person, or to somebody from PR. These were the key problems that they were faced with, the key business problems. This was the impact and the effect of those problems on their environment and business, and this is how we solved them. These are the capabilities that we provided. This was the product or service that we put in place in order to solve those problems. After 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, these were the results. This was the satisfaction that they were facing after a successful implementation. So what we have here is a template for a short story, a very short story, so short in fact that you can speak it out in 1 or 2 minutes. So short in fact that you can write it into the body of an email in a very structured, clear and concise fashion. This is not the type of reference story that gets posted on a website. Yeah? For that, you need something more similar to what we looked at previously. This is the type of story that is used in a couple of situations. When you're on the corridor in your customer's environment and they introduce you to somebody new, you've wanted to speak to them for a while, that's the opportunity to bring out a reference story, to create interest and curiosity, to get another meeting with them. Yeah? When you're on the telephone and you go into step 0 in the acquisition campaign, when you're faced with this dilemma of getting on the phone and getting in front of people, or when you go to a trade fair or an exhibition where your job is getting business cards and finding people to speak to, those are the true environments where the reference story template can be used, where you have 1 minute, 30 seconds, 2 minutes to speak to somebody, and then you're not going to see them again unless you're going to follow up with them and maybe try and find some business from them. Yeah? And so what we're doing here is we're creating small stories to fit with different functions and people, so that when you call and you say, "Are you the sales director?" And you say, "Yes, I am. I've been working with another sales director in your environment, in your industry, and they were suffering from these key problems." As a sales director, you're probably going to say, "Okay, sounds kind of interesting. I'm academically interested in understanding the problems that other people like me go through," right? I see a likeness there, I see an affiliation. I don't have to tell you that your country is wrong, your geography is wrong, or your industry or company comparison is wrong, because you're speaking about salespeople like me. I can call up a finance person and say, "Dear sir, I have a story to tell you about a finance environment. It's different to yours, but I think there might be some similarities." And you're a finance person, you're probably going to say, well, you're either going to say, "I've got no time," and put down the phone, which will happen as well. But if you're going to listen to this story, you're going to evaluate it on its closeness to finance and your job as a finance person. And believe it or not, a finance person in the petrochemical industry and a finance person in the local supermarket have got similar things that they do, similar concerns, similar problems that they deal with. They can see the likeness, they can see the similarity, and they will judge it accordingly. So what we have discovered is that the reference story template that is built like this is more versatile, more user-friendly, more usable than the larger case study that we have. It also, as we move into step 0 in the acquisition campaign, it has a couple of other advantages. I probably speak about them later, I've forgotten, but I'll just mention them now as well. New salespeople, as they come into your organization, they can understand very quickly what the value of your products and services are based on this type of small reference story, because they see how the products and services have addressed individual needs and individual problems and pains. New sales reps also benefit greatly from this very, very clear description of a customer's problem, which is not focused on your product, but is focused on their business. So the process of training new people not to speak about their stuff, but to really keep the customer stuff very closely in their minds, is something that helps the process as well. Another advantage of this is that it helps for the process of working with the marketing department to develop small case studies and reference stories according to this style, because that in turn helps them see in which way they can support the sales environment in creating and executing an acquisition campaign for the purpose of finding white space, business and new opportunity. Et voila, the reference story template.